Hello and welcome here to Best of the West, a podcast here with Blake Street Banter. I am your host, Skylar Timmons, joined here as always with my partner in crime. It's Kenneth Weber. How you doing, Kenneth?
Hello. Good to see you. How we doing?
We're hanging in there,
We
celebrating the
are,
holidays. We're chatting a little bit before we went live here about our Christmas gifts and all that good stuff.
yeah,
But
lots of Rockies paraphernalia. What'd you get? Unfortunately, not a new owner, so still in that same place. But otherwise, things are good. Got some cool swag. Otherwise,
yeah, it's as you get older, you find less and less stuff as you get older. At least that's what I found. You're like, that's when you get excited about, oh, dang, a pack of socks. Like, heck yeah.
yeah, I don't want things more than I want things.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to add more of what I already have too much of, just stuff in general.
Yeah.
So I like when it's a low key Christmas for sure.
Yeah. That's chill. Just watch all your movies, chill out, hang out, good stuff. And unfortunately, no, as Rockies fans, Rockies didn't get really much of anything for Christmas. But hey, there's teams around the National League West that did have some good Christmas shopping, getting some nice gifts along the way. And that's what we want to jump into here, Kenneth, is the Arizona Diamondbacks. Over these past couple episodes, we've talked about what are they doing? There's things they need to do. What are they exactly up to? Well, we got a little bit clearer picture recently as they had some big moves, and probably the biggest, we'll get to the other one, but biggest is adding to their rotation, signing the prized arm on the market, Corbin Burnes, former Cy Young Award winner, finished in the top 10 in voting 5 consecutive years in a row. They go and get Corbin Burnes on a pretty record contract here of over 6 years, of like $210 million, adding to the front line of their rotation. And Kenneth, what was your reaction to that news of Burnes going to the desert?
I don't think anybody imagined Arizona being like at least a front runner, if not a major player for Burns. That would be that dark horse candidate. I think for a lot of people with preseason predictions. But kind of a first gut reaction, it reminded me that this isn't Arizona's first time with these big swings for the fences for veteran starting pitchers in free agency. Madison Bumgarner was the most recent one, and that one ended pretty kind of brutally. In fact, they had to get rid of him to become the team they are now
Mm-hmm.
by DFAing him midseason a few years back. And then before that, they had Zach Greinke, who was, pretty good in his time with Arizona, but not the same pitcher he was in LA. Regardless, they kind of came out of nowhere again, and so it's surprising for sure, but you start to get more of an idea of, okay, how much are they really trying to seize the moment? Well, adding Corbin Burnes, which, like you mentioned, 5 straight seasons with Cy Young votes, the only active player to be on that streak. That's as big of a swing as you can make. That's not named Juan Soto this
Mm-hmm.
offseason. So they really push their cards in with this Burnes edition, no doubt.
Yeah, and reports coming in, there's about a little north of $60 million in deferred money. He has the opt out after 2026, so he's roughly earning about 30 million per season, and then there's about 10 to 11 per year deferred. And then if he does do the opt out, the 20 million has to be paid out within the following year. So a pretty conservative contract. It's the craftiness, the deferred money that's really getting popular.
Mm-hmm.
They do all these things, but there's also the reports where it was kind of Burnes that approached the Diamondbacks first, and that deal kind of came together within this last week because he lives in Arizona and he comes to them and said, "Hey, let's work something out." And out of nowhere, a team that we all thought was they're probably not going to try to add to their payroll too much. They're trying to trade away some starting pitching. What? They're signing a new ace? What the heck? So a very surprising move, but when you look at it, like still a good signing, or at least a good player
Mm-hmm.
that they're getting to add to that rotation.
Yeah, Burnes is just going to be one of those players, no matter what, that no team is going to be worse off for adding Corbin
Yeah.
Burnes. But it's interesting when you see it come together with geography being a
Mhm.
factor. It it gets rumored a lot, I feel like, but rarely comes into play with negotiations and free agents. And so that part being included in Burns's negotiations and the whole process of it all is actually very interesting. And another thing that I think was just kind of very hard to account for when thinking about Burns and his free agent destinations at the start of this all, when the offseason began.
Yeah, but so it's pretty interesting. Just a surprise move out of nowhere. But now with that reported addition, their starting rotation now looks Corbin Burnes, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. Then you have Eduardo Rodriguez, Brandon Pfaadt, and Jordan Montgomery. So a nice depth of starting pitchers. You can add Ryan Nelson in there as
Mm-hmm.
well. So their already good starting rotation depth gets even longer by adding Burnes. But now this brings to light the question of, are they going to trade one of these guys, a Jordan Montgomery or Merrill Kelly, any of these guys? Are they on the trading block? Is it becoming more apparent that, yeah, they're probably going to make another move to just clear out some space for Burnes?
I definitely wouldn't be surprised if there is that other move, that other shoe waiting to drop a little bit, and it also dovetails with the conversation we had on Kendrick's remarks about basically throwing Montgomery on the bus, under the bus,
Mhm.
and his disdain for that contract. So, money is always going to be a factor. Sometimes it's disappointing. Like the Mariners are kind of flirting with dealing Luis Castillo, and it's all for
Yeah.
financial reasons. So that's always going to be a part of it all. I think that it would really behoove Arizona to take a good look at how Los Angeles has been as dominant as they've been for so long. It's hard to always just pull out an Otani contract out of your
Yeah.
pocket, sure. But the depth of starting pitching that they consistently have has always been something where starting pitching has never been that big of a problem. You can question
Mhm.
how effective it will be in the postseason, but it's not going to sink them.
Yeah.
Eduardo Rodriguez and Jordan Montgomery kind of can't be worse than they were last year.
Mhm.
That's good veteran depth to have in the rotation. That lowers expectations for somebody like Pfaadt. That gives someone like Ryan Nelson more runway to develop a little bit more into a starter, possibly. But it adds more to that depth chart, which you can't have too much pitching. I think it's something that gets ignored by some teams, but man, the teams that subscribe to it, it really pays off for them.
Yeah, and they're in that, situation where they have all this depth now. It's not immediate that, oh man, we got to trade somebody right now. They've gotten this done early. They've got quite a bit of time before spring training starts, where they can just test out the waters and see what teams may come to them and say, hey, we'll take Montgomery off your hands because we want a good starter. We feel like we can help him out,
Mhm.
or Eduardo Rodriguez, we can help him bounce back. So this puts the Diamondbacks in a nice advantageous spot where teams that missed out on Burns, hey, we can come to the Diamondbacks and say, hey, well, you got Burns, but we'll take one of these other guys off your hands because we think they're still pretty good. And so it's
Yeah.
not an immediate thing they have to do. They have time to feel out the waters and find the best deal possible. But
It
they're go ahead.
it gives them leverage, ultimately
Yeah.
at the end of the day, because if they're in a position where they're saying, "Hey, we can start the season with Jordan Montgomery being the long guy and really align our rotation for the first 6 weeks of the season to our convenience," or obviously with the inevitable spring training injury, if they get to be the unfortunate ones that get railed in the Cactus League season, and they walk into it a lot more prepared. So
Yeah.
that just gives them a lot more leverage in the situation. And I think you're selling low on somebody like Montgomery no matter what. So what does it hurt to sit around and wait and see if he throws a little bit better? So it
Yeah.
improves the stock a little bit.
Yeah. And like Patrick Lyons saying there, a six-man rotation. That could even be an idea. Like, well, let's give that a look and see if we can't move these guys and we don't want to eat the money that we probably have to send with them. Let's see what we can get and have a good six-man rotation, but or at least have that option. But it's I think their payroll roughly sitting at 194 million estimated according to Roster Resource. That's about 20 million more than last season's, which they
Hmm.
had said, hey, we're going to probably be close to 2024. Well, now they're in unprecedented, uncharted territory. as an organization in payroll. So, but a signing out of left field of Corbin Burnes going to the Diamondbacks, and I think it gives them a nice competitive rotation to go up against the likes of the Dodgers, which, hey, you'll take that. You'll take it very much so.
It's a high bar to clear, but I mean, this is definitely as valid of an attempt as you can really make. And it's just again the emphasis I feel like really needs to also go back to just how good Corbin Burnes is. This has been pretty much a de facto ace, whether it be for the Brewers for the majority of his career or for Baltimore last year. That has been a proven Cy Young caliber commodity for going on a decade now, overall. And so that's a really big piece to add. And I think it really changes the outlook of Arizona as, as a National League playoff team.
Yeah, it plugs up a hole that we were talking about or shores up one. Another hole that they had to plug, perfect segue here, is trading for Josh Naylor over to replace Christian Walker at first base, make the trade with the Cleveland Guardians, send a couple guys over there to receive Josh Naylor. And is this an upgrade, downgrade from Christian Walker? What do you make of this move of turning Christian Walker, basically replacing him with Josh Naylor?
Yeah. If we want to talk about the 2025 season, uh, I generally would feel like a bit of a wash. I wouldn't be surprised if one turns out better than the other. But I think that they're on that same plane of about an all-star level first baseman, maybe not necessarily an MVP caliber offensive player. I think the long-term outlook for somebody like Naylor and also kind of some clubhouse presence that we presume was lost with Christian Walker departing and him being kind of a veteran, I think is an intangible that kind of comes into play with Naylor, along with a little bit more youth baked into it. So it's for 2025, I think that this is a good addition for a Diamondbacks team that needed to address that position. But I don't know what their plans are long term with him. That's kind of the confusing part.
Yeah, because I believe he's a free agent after this season.
Hmm.
I think so. So yeah, so they're kind of getting him for the stopgap 1 year and see how he does. If he's good, we can work something out and keep him around. You're definitely not getting the same probably defensive value as you did with Christian Walker with the Gold Glove, but you are getting the immense power potential, and I think that's what's most attractive for him is just adding another kind of power bat into that lineup. Play first base kind of pairs well with Eugenio Suarez.
Hmm.
They kind of took it felt like Jock Peterson and Christian Walker, and then just molded him into one player
Yeah.
to put on that team. So it's depending on how things go with Naylor, could be a qualifying offer candidate. Boom, you get a nice pick, a compensation pick.
Hmm.
So who knows? It's a nice gamble, at least a competitive move for 2025. But then they leave some questions open for beyond next season.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unconventional patch move
Yeah,
at its baseline at least, and so I guess it's just a curious case of do you see the Diamondbacks committing more financially, or are you going to enter next offseason with the same question of is Pavin Smith the guy? Because it's not necessarily like someone's beating down the door for a
yeah,
first base spot for the Diamondbacks, and it wasn't a huge haul that they gave up, and they had some depth to trade from with that farm system. So again, for 25, I like the move, and also when it comes to defense, there's a pretty high bar with Walker being a Gold Glove defensive first baseman, but Naylor's a former catcher, a former
yeah,
outfielder, so there's a lot of athleticism where Naylor's not a huge drop off necessarily there. So, but again, it's just how much is this window going to be impacted for the Diamondbacks with
yeah,
Naylor being included?
yeah. It's because there's other guys. The other guy at the hot corner, A. Suarez, he's on a final year of his deal, and
Hmm.
so it's maybe a slightly like win now, do what we can in 2025, and then we've got to reassess and redo some stuff heading into 2026 and beyond. But for right now, we're just going to do what we can to compete right now, and we'll worry about that later.
How many pool shots do you think Josh Naylor's going to hit this year? I kind of forgot about the Naylor acquisition just because the Burnes deal is such a headline grabber that you
Yeah.
almost you quickly forget about Naylor. But man, his right center shots, it feels a little tailor made for some splash hits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 31 home runs in 2024. And where he's playing, Arizona is a bit more hitter friendly. He's going to be playing at Coors Field several times a year. So he's in a nice position here to get that offense and getting some nice keynotes here behind the scenes of other free agents for Arizona. You got Suarez, Naylor, Jordan Montgomery, Merrill Kelly, and Zach Gallen. So you're getting a huge pool of guys coming down to the wire. So I think it behooves, to borrow a Jim Tracy quote, it behooves them to really try to compete in 2025 and then reassess from there. But got to keep that window open.
Yeah, that Merrill Kelly contract was just such a sweetheart deal. It turned out to be, at least, with him coming over, and so they're trying to make the most out of that. And then Zach Gallen, that's the end of his team control, so that's going to be a pricey free agent deal. So it really makes you wonder, also, what's the future of this rotation? How
Yeah.
much runway does a Nelson and a Pfaadt have to develop into starters?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting one here. And Mikey Westside, welcome. Appreciate having you here. Good stuff. Hope you tune in each week here on Best of the West, talking about our National League West folks. And moving on from the Diamondbacks here, Kenneth, one that we had talked about was the San Francisco Giants had been looking at Burnes. They seemed like, okay, we're going to make a play for Burnes. That does not happen now. So what do the Giants do now? They're wanting to get after something. What does Buster Posey do next after missing out on Corbin Burnes? Do they turn to a pitching, or do they move elsewhere?
The more I think about it, the more it just sits right of Pete Alonso and the Giants getting together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Willie Adames, finally landing a big elite offensive player through free agency was a big step. But I think that there's still a lot of areas to address on this Giants team offensively, and they've made the most out of getting multiple units to produce well at a position in a lot of platoon roles and stuff like that. I'd like some cornerstones in that lineup, and Willie Adames is a good starting point. But if Willie Adames is your best hitter, it's not always a title contending, lineup in comparison to especially somebody like the Dodgers. So,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm San Francisco, I shift all of my focus to landing Pete Alonso now.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there too. Even if nothing else, just either you can stick him at first base or you use him as DH, or just splitting in between the two spots. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he can bring some thump into your lineup and some more regularity, like we talked about in our last get together. Because it's like Lamont Wade Jr. is your penciled in first baseman. We can probably do better than that, in a
Oh
sense.
yeah. Yeah, and everybody talks about first base being an elite position, but I feel like a lot of teams also really skimp on it.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where if you can add arguably, the best hitter at the position to your lineup, you've been trying to land big fish for a long time now. This is a position that would be a clear upgrade for you.
Yeah.
Money where your mouth is kind of situation. And, I think Logan Webb is a good stabilizing force. Obviously, pitching reinforcements, I couldn't be opposed to that. And I think that there could be areas to address there for San Francisco. But I don't think it's in terrible shape. I don't think that they're walking into this offseason with, oh my God, my pitching is on fire.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, turn the focus to Alonso, score some runs, so that way if you're the other 3 days of the week past your top 2, you still can out hit your problems in most of those games.
Yeah. And interesting that Pete Alonso at Oracle Park, he's got a 910 OPS there in Oracle Park. 7 home runs, 21 ribbies. 7 home runs pretty much ties him with a lot of non National League East ballparks that he's played in. He's got 7 at Yankee Stadium, 8 at Wrigley, 6 at that's in Atlanta, 7 at Oracle Park, and then he's got 7 at Dodger Stadium. So, and 6 at Coors Field. So he's got plenty. He fits in there.
Yeah.
He could make it work hitting there at Oracle Park.
Who was it? We talked about Michael Conforto signing with the Dodgers last episode, I believe. And we talked about, and you dropped some good stats, just like you just did, about Conforto's home power stats compared to kind of his road hitting and how Oracle was just a rough fit for him. Left-handed power, not named Barry Bonds, has a hard time hitting in San Francisco. Like, that's just the way it works. So addressing it with right-handed power, kind of the same way the Brewers flipped a coin years and years back that said lefty hitters do well here. Add that. This could also be, a turn in that direction with additions like Chapman, Adames, and Pete Alonso over the course of 2 seasons. So I think that it's a big move that the Giants are still very capable of making. And there's a lot of punches being thrown around this division right now too. So the Adames signing kind of feels like a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Hitting them with Alonso would, put the Giants on the radar again too.
Yeah, and I think it's more prudent to sign a guy like Alonso, boost up that offense even more, and still focus on adding a pitcher. There's a lot of free agent guys there. There's Jack Flaherty, Nick Pivetta. You got some of the old veterans who can slot in that back end of that rotation. But I don't think it's as prudent, like we were saying, because you still got Logan Webb. You got some nice young arms in that rotation that you can continue to develop. Maybe they look to add a reasonably priced free agent starter that's maybe not top of the line, but still a nice supportive. But yeah, I think pursue Pete Alonso, bolster that offense because you need to improve your offense even more to help support that pitching staff.
Yeah, I don't think anybody. I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say they felt that the Giants were out on Corbin Burnes. I think everybody saw the match there just because of what San Francisco and good pitching, fits the way that they do. However, I think that they didn't come in saying, "Hey, you need an ace." Nobody said the Giants need an ace. They just know that an ace will be good in San Francisco. So getting a little bit more reinforcement. I think Jack Flaherty, even if they do swing for like a Pete Alonso, is not out of the question. I don't think anybody's expecting Jack Flaherty to get $150 million,
Yeah.
So you can still add somebody who's a number 3 or maybe a number 4 and improve the pitching staff, but you weren't in a spot where you needed to add an ace in the first place. So that's where they already had a leg up, at least with the competition.
Yeah. They can do something akin to when they signed Sean Manaea a few years ago. Those shorter term 2-year deals with the opt-outs. Get in with Blake Snell this past year. A nice, quick, easy one. It's still a good pitcher, but if you can hold on to him, great. If not, well, we'll just go do it again somewhere else.
I also think they have a really good opportunity to kind of spin somebody into gold, where it could be just kind of a lower under the radar signing. And somebody that I'm looking at right now, and I think he recovered, but I'm not sure if he went down again. But like John Means is still listed on the free agent market, and this is somebody who was really ascending pretty high before a TJ knocked him out essentially for 2 years. But if he's healthy and returning, and you stick him in this vast acreage that is, Oracle Park, hey, that could be one of those signings where they look really, really smart for locking a guy up for 2 years and $12 million when he's turning into a $20 million a year pitcher. That's totally, just in the possibilities for San Francisco based on their environment.
Yeah. So yeah, the Giants find themselves in a nice spot, but maybe need to start kicking those wheels a little bit and see what they can get done here. If they want to build upon the Willy Adames signing, that can't be where you stop. There's got to be something else you do to make your splash. And I think we're in agreement. Pete Alonso, send the polar bear out to the Bay.
How weird would it be to see like Justin Verlander in a Giants jersey?
About as weird as seeing Randy Johnson in a Giants jersey.
All right, yeah, that's fair. That one did look really weird. He looked like he was wearing a Halloween costume.
Yeah. One of those weird ones. I just remember him, and then he got his 300th win
Yeah.
or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I
That's right.
remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
He's
but he
like,
looked
what
like my uncle dressing up as Randy Johnson for Halloween.
But shifting gears here, let's head out down to San Diego, or San Diego, as some call it. But now we've time before we're not sure what can the Padres do, and they're dealing with a lot of stuff behind the scenes, figuring out with ownership group and all that stuff, and maybe moving money around, moving players where they can, and whatnot. But there had been talk where Dylan Cease would be a guy that maybe they're looking at moving, and now that Burnes is off the table and also Max Fried, there's options where their market with Dylan Cease may look a little bit more attractive, where teams maybe call him up the phone and say, "Hey, we want Cease. What can we get done?" Do you think that's kind of the path the Padres can go now?
I do, and it's an interesting position that they're in because I wonder if it goes a bit the way that the Detroit Tigers did after Mr. I passed away,
Mhm.
where when you think of the Tigers before this past postseason run and their last kind of era of excellence was the Verlander years, was the Miggy years, and at least the his peak years there. Um, that all went away. All that spending, all that reinforcement really kind of died down after there was that change in ownership. And I think that there was a lot of that same movement with the Padres over the past couple of
Mhm.
years. And now, with the bill becoming due, I could see them really start shedding some skin pretty quickly. I don't know if they're motivated to do it just this season, but I think you could see them, especially if they get off to maybe a slow start, kind of dropping some weight along the way. So I think of like somebody like a Rise could also be where they're just motivated to move based off the money. Having C's dangled out there, you can get a very legitimate return for him, and that's the reason to put it out there. And you question, but that's the questions that we have. How much are they going to be willing to spend to keep Dylan Cease around
Yeah.
over multiple years, not just what do you have remaining?
Yeah, and they've got a John Seidler, so Peter Seidler's brother is taking over as the control person for the Padres. So
Mhm.
maybe there you can hope, there'll just be some continuity and we'll have that same mentality that his brother had. But yeah, there's so many of those questions, and the Padres can look and say, "Hey, we're pretty advantageous here. We've got Dylan Cease. We don't expect really to keep him around, kind of like a Juan Soto, when the Juan Soto situation, where hey, let's spin him out on a one year and
Mhm.
see what we can get back a good little return and see if that works out well." Like AJ Preller's, has he done enough to build enough fan, I guess, investment and faith in that he can get a good advantageous deal done, or is it like kind of losing faith with the fans where they see, they're shopping Arise, they're shopping Cease. What are we doing? No, are we looking to just shed payroll? Or are we going to keep pushing to try and compete with the Dodgers? Those are some legitimate questions I think fans out in San Diego are having of what are we doing exactly?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it sounds a lot like being a Mariners fan, to be honest, because
Yeah.
it's like a roller coaster of this flurry of activity, some good, some bad, and so you're just left. It's just kind of staring into the unknown a little bit
Mhm.
with somebody like San Diego because they have completely stripped their farm system, but also a farm system that was built with a strategy of being sold off quickly, and so they might be able to reinforce, quickly within the next 2 years, and we'll see the same strategy that we saw during the Juan Soto acquisition period. Um, it's I really want to see what the ownership's direction is because I think that that's going to influence the moves. And you ask if AJ Preller has the trust. I think that you make a seismic move to trade your farm system to acquire a Juan Soto, and then you have to deal him because you're not going to keep him. Like these are
Mhm.
these are carrying out orders. kind of moves. This is not Preller deciding, I do and I don't want Juan Soto. I'm here, I'm not. This is not like a middle school relationship. So I think he's done well enough, and I think that you recognize that somebody like Cease is in a position to get a good return. So yeah, I have trust that he could do that. It just you wonder why they're here in the first place. And the more that you look at their situation, boy, if you just take Xander Bogart's contract out of this and pretend it
Mm,
never happened, you're feeling pretty good about like where you're at, and you're not as stressed the same way. So that's what's kind of made the head scratcher since it was inked. But that's the reality they're working with.
yeah, it's you're seeing in their offseason moves thus far. It's mostly just been minor league contracts. Something that we're pretty accustomed to out here in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, no
Uh,
kidding.
so a lot of minor league moves, and I feel like a trade is probably the biggest thing that they'll do this offseason of moving a Dylan Cease or a Luis Ariz if they can figure that out. But Dylan Cease, I'm sure a lot of teams will, just like we talked about with the Diamondbacks, a lot of
Mhm.
teams will be calling AJ Preller and say, "Hey, what's it going to take to get Dylan Cease on our team?"
Yeah. And I think again, just with the expiring years of control, you really do have a stronger consideration or, possibly a stronger motivation to move him. I think if he wanted to get creative, a rise, it wouldn't be the hardest to move out necessarily. Um, Packaging Cronenworth, there's like 5 more years left on that deal. That's a toughie. So
Mhm.
they have some money that they'd like to move, and I think that they'll be in a position where they could. Michael King, I mean, dude, he was brilliant in the playoffs. You might really be able to sell very, very high on him too,
Mm,
as a converted reliever because he's going to be a free agent at the same time as Cease. So they have tools at their disposal. It's just how bumpy is this roller coaster ride gonna get? Like, that's
yeah,
kind of what I feel like you have to be feeling as a Padres fan, which again is what the Diamond or the Mariners fan base has been living with forever with dealing Dipoto. So
yeah, yeah. But interesting stuff out there, and I like this question from Isaac. Baseball players are getting better than ever. Do you think long rebuilds are going to come to a halt across the MLB, aside from the Rockies, with how much quality is always available? And uh, that's the thing too. Even if not rebuilds, but like just the constant churning of
mhm,
offensive trades that we're seeing where, oh, yeah, we can let a player go and we can replace him with somebody else who's pretty equal in a sense. We talk about the Diamondbacks with Josh Naylor. Uh, More or less, you're getting the same kind of production, power production. So I feel like those rebuilds, they're still going to happen with some teams, but I think rebuilds can happen a lot quicker. Windows of contention can happen a lot quicker if teams are willing to go after it, like we saw with the Diamondbacks and the Kansas City Royals.
mhm. Yeah, and I mean the Diamondbacks were in the slums of their rebuild years and still have a good farm system because of it. I think another good point to Isaac's question is you now have financial incentive to make sure you're not bottoming out and spending forever in the
Yeah,
cellar because there's the draft lottery and you can be the Chicago White Sox and lose the record, lose the most games ever and still get booted from consideration of a top overall pick to really
yeah,
improve and expedite your rebuild. So it's going to happen, and I think the ones that are going to be the longest are going to be the ones that are a byproduct of incompetence from the management side. So that's always going to be something. Somebody like the Pirates and the Royals can't go 30 years without making the playoffs for no reason. So that's always going to be a thing, but I do think that yeah, in general, management has also gotten incredibly smarter for the majority of franchises, and I think that it does improve the product on the field, and it helps when a plan gets put in place and you see organizations turn around really quickly. And I think one of the best examples was Elias being hired for Baltimore and how they came out of their rebuild compared to what they are now. Now, if they can just find a way to start winning a playoff series, then
yeah,
you're really feeling like the rebuild's complete. But they're in a very strong position based off of the management and the hive mind that got put in place.
yeah. There's more of a sense of an urgency, I think, for a lot of
Mhm.
teams. Of we can't sit and wait for all these prospects to hopefully wait and develop. Like we're going to try to move them up quick, see what we've got. Hey, if it's not working out, well, we're going to move on, and hey, we're going to get this guy off the free agent market, we're going to lock him in for several years because he's a sure thing. Speaking of which, perfect segue here into the Los Angeles Dodgers, who do this quite a bit, and they have re-upped with Teoscar Hernandez on a was it a 3-year deal, bringing him back after a wonderful year in 2024. Tested the free agent market, coming back to the Dodgers, who now have adds another strong bat to that outfield after adding Conforto in kind of a platoon role or whatever he'll be. But now you add Teoscar back in, and are the Dodgers finally done now? Or is this just still another drop in the bucket and they're going to go get Roki Sasaki or something?
Yeah, I mean, first, as long as Sasaki is still out there, you can't say for sure that the Dodgers are done until we know definitively where Sasaki signs. Do you remember when they signed Blake Snell?
It seems like forever ago.
Yeah, and so like I don't know. You can't count the Dodgers out on anything necessarily. I think are there any more big swings left in them? Are they going after Pete Alonso? No. I don't think they're going that direction or anything that large. They locked up Tommy Edman, I think, to an extension also this offseason. So they've been cleaning up their house a little bit. There's not a ton of money put into the bullpen. I could see the Dodgers kind of going out there and trying to address that area a little bit more. I don't think that there's largely enticing options out there on the free agent market. Something that blows you away, but I don't think the Dodgers necessarily have to go out for that proven 50 save closer guy. That's not the organization they are anymore. So I could see them addressing some bullpen holes, touching up the corners a little bit, but I think this is a pretty complete picture with the Dodgers outside of the possibility of Sasaki.
Yeah, or like we've talked about before, maybe Nolan Arenado. They work out a trade there, type of thing. But yeah, with the Dodgers, they've done so much, and there's, like I said, there's still plenty more they can do. They'll always pull out something and defer that money into
I
Kingdom
just broke
Come. But
I broke my own heart a little bit too because the Arenado is still a possibility. It didn't come to my mind for whatever reason, but if you want to kind of address the bullpen at the same time, somehow the Dodgers find a way to pull Ryan Helsley and Nolan Arenado out of their butt for Dalton Rushing or something like that, and man, that'd be devastating because all of a sudden it's like, great, Eric Gagne's back. That's awesome. They needed exactly that. Thank you. So yeah, that could happen. I could see that.
yeah, and there's always they can do whatever they want. Like, we've come down to.
On the Teoscar side, just to finish the thought, man, it just looked too right from both sides, right? Obviously, you go out there and if you see if Cohen wants to give you a cut of that Juan Soto money, maybe, and get a little weird with this checkbook. No, okay, you know what? It's a good thing. Go back to it. I think that it's a reasonable contract for a very good player in a very good situation, and it's a championship player for a championship caliber team kind of feel. And so it's nice as a baseball fan that stuck and that's still a thing.
Yeah, 3 years, 66 million, has a club option for 2028, 15 million. I think there's some more deferred money in that deal as well, which we've come to expect it. It's the Dodgers special.
Yeah, and the inevitability of deferred money. But Dodgers, man, that's a stacked team. And I don't know about that starting pitching. Just how much health will come back into it. Is Tyler
Yeah.
Glasnow, is Dustin May going to be coming back? Is Tony Gosselin going to be a factor, for this team? There's a lot of potential arms that could be coming back into it. Obviously, Ohtani, you can throw that into it too. The guy who didn't throw it all last year, but is probably the best ever at doing that too. So it's a precarious spot for the Los Angeles Dodgers. But again, this just proves, hey, the more starting pitching you have, the more you're able to address problems when they arise, at least.
Yeah. No, they could end up with a lot of money on that injured list, but if they stay healthy and productive, it's a scary rotation. With more to come behind it.
Yeah. I'm calling it Justin Verlander signs to be the fifth starter there.
Yeah.
I'll just Verlander chases a ring with the Dodgers next year.
Yeah. Oh,
That's their
yeah.
next big move.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't put it past them because
Mhm.
I think they're wanting to bring back Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, they
It's
signed
just a
Verlander, Kershaw, and Scherzer to combine to throw about 120 innings. That's your number 4, basically.
we're going back in time, baby.
Mhm. We got ourselves the
Early
2000.
2010s.
Yeah, the 2011 NL All-Star rotation.
That'd work out.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation for Los Angeles. Um, but yeah, there's always more that they can do. Yeah, and
Get
MadBum
out.
comes out of retirement to join them. There we go. Or Mason Saunders.
I was about to say, how many Mason Saunders appearances do we need here tonight? It's like the Spanish Armada.
Yeah, there you go. And but to close this one out, we always have to touch on the Rockies really quickly. Not a whole lot. They're just doing some minor league deals. They signed Diego Casilla recently, Castillo on a minor league deal. Not a bad move. Just hoping this 30-year-old reliever can kind of get back into it, work on his control. So not a bad depth piece. But for the Rockies, it seems like while these other teams are going after big names and looking to figure out the Rockies are still looking at the Rockies are the parent. We're asking them, hey, can we get a superstar? And they say we have a superstar at home, and that superstar is Chris Bryant, apparently, who they're still banking on him being that MVP, the stabilizer in their lineup. And all reports saying that his back's doing good, that he's been working all off season, that he's feeling good. But we're still not sure what exactly their plan is with Chris Bryant, or whether
Uh,
Chris Bryant can actually do anything for him.
yeah, I don't. If you're walking into 2025 with the expectation that Chris Bryant is going to be your best offensive player, then you're setting way too low of expectations because Chris Bryant, like, he's just not ever going to be 2016 Chris Bryant again. And if
Yeah,
that's what you're hanging your hat on, then I'm sorry to tell you, then you're going to be waiting forever. So, um, I don't know. Great that they're, the Rockies and they're still around. But if leaning on Brian at this point, anything you get at him positive is great, but you can't count on him to be anything more than an ancillary veteran piece. That's probably a lower third of the lineup DH bat, because they're going to start him because they're paying him the money.
yeah.
Anything outside of that expectation is kind of delirious.
Now here's a question for you. We'll build upon it from Mikey Westside. Where do you think Alex Bregman ends up? No, do the Rockies figure out something and say, hey, we're going to trade Ryan McMahon, but we're going to turn around and we're going to sign Alex Bregman?
Mhm.
Everything, or do you think that could be a
Not at
weird
all.
random
No,
possibility? Or
not at all.
where do you think
No.
he ends up? Is there any chance he even ends up here in this National League West at all?
Most likely not. I could see this being the Dodgers sneaking in late. I feel like Freddie Freeman was kind of a late in the process after plenty of negotiations to stay in Atlanta. So I don't rule that out, but I don't necessarily expect it. I think it really comes down to two teams for me right now, which is returning to Houston or going to Boston. I feel like Boston is the one that has been attached with Bregman's name the most, and it makes a lot of sense to slide Devers over to first base. Then you have Bregman full time at starting third base. Uh, but and they've been mentioned to be throwing Tristan Cassis out there in a lot of trade negotiations. So that's what my gut tells me is between Houston and Boston for Bregman.
Yeah, and I think it seems like I think a lot of people are thinking like, yeah, the door's probably closed in Houston after the trade for Isaac Paredes and also then signing Christian Walker. So then you got your two corner positions filled up,
Mhm.
and you're not doling out a ton of money. So then Bregman, who's probably asking for quite a bit as a Scott Boras client, maybe he could be a thing that the Dodgers sneak in. Like, well, we're not getting Arenado, but hey, let's go get Bregman, who
Yeah.
can then slot in at third base. Hey, if we even wanted, I bet we could teach him to play short even more.
Yeah. Well, Bregman is a very known commodity. And I think if because didn't his free agency start out with Scott Boras throwing some off the wall like 300 million?
It was
number
over
out there.
200 at least.
And so it's come down, and I think the most recent that I saw, I felt like it was like 180 or something. I don't remember exactly. If Bregman's price keeps coming down, I think that there's going to be a lot of people in play. I think Philadelphia has
Mhm.
been looking for a reason to upgrade from Alec Boehm, and I think if the price is right, absolutely Philadelphia comes into the mix. So, I don't think he's going to be necessarily doing just like a 2 by 40 for any team. And if it gets to that point, I think the Astros will step up before then. But I could see the Dodgers having some crazy 1 year opt out, super deferred contract. That's either 1 year or 5 years, who knows? And
Mhm.
Alex Bregman is now a Dodger. So that's a possibility. Sure. I don't see really anybody else in the NL West stepping up to land Bregman, though. I will say that.
No, I think most everybody's locked up at third base pretty well.
Or
That's
doesn't spend money.
yeah. It's
So,
the Dodgers are like the only one that are kinda open at third base with
mhm.
Max Muncy and Chris Taylor kind of fitting into there at third base.
Yep.
But it's an interesting thing. I think he's one of the next big bats that'll be coming off the market. I think once Pete Alonso gets figured out, then Bregman comes off the board.
Do you think it goes Alonso first?
That's what it feels like. Where it get maybe he can because they kind of feel like similar players
Yeah,
in a sense offensively.
I
Where
could see it.
so it feels like well, once Alonso comes off, then we can. It feels like then okay, Bregman then can follow suit.
Mhm.
Is
I'm
the big
not I'm not entirely sold on Paredes being a for sure answer for the Astros at third base. I think that that could be kind of a versatile infield bench bat kind of guy. Like I could see
Mhm.
them implementing that, especially because they're going to have some ABs to fill with Tucker now gone. Um, so yeah, I don't see Houston. If I'll say this, if the Arenado trade had happened, the one that he vetoed to
Yeah,
Houston, I think Bregman for sure would have signed already.
yeah, I
But
think so
I
too.
so I guess it's just a coin flip for me between Bregman and Alonso on who signs first. But I feel like there's been a little bit more steam to the rumors of Bregman than Alonso.
Yeah,
So I will say that.
yeah, yeah. There's always plenty more to be done here in the baseball world as we grow closer entering 2025. Spring training just several weeks away, about a month away. We're getting there. It's
This
it's
is the
so
fun
close.
time. I have a do you have any weird, like, traditions or weird things when baseball season starts creeping up on you and, like, in your mind?
In high school, I used to pretty much wear like baseball related shirts. Like once January hit, I just started wearing a baseball shirt like every day, whether it was a
Mhm.
jersey or like the 3/4 sleeve baseball tees, the white tee with the colored arm
Yeah.
sleeves, 3/4.
Your Philly fanatic onesie.
Yeah. I didn't go that far. 59 confidence, Kenneth.
Right.
It's a
No,
dingler
I was
onesie.
just I was just curious though, because like for me, the Kerry Wood 20 strikeout game is like so easily and readily available to watch. And I always have that like come into my mind of just like thinking about baseball is like, oh, that's the greatest game to watch. I'm gonna watch the Kerry Wood game. I kind of feel that Kerry Wood game and like that viewing coming in again. So that's like when I know baseball season starts creeping up on me.
Yeah, it's right around the corner, and we'll be
Absolutely amazing game for anybody who's never seen it. It's just like type on YouTube, Kerry
mhm,
Wood 20 strikeout game. Also, you get to
mhm.
see what a 90 strike zone looks like, which is pretty wild in its own right.
But yeah, it's getting closer, and we'll be here right along the way here on Best of the West. We appreciate you tuning in along with us and following along. And yeah, 50 days. It's coming Thursday, 50 days until the first spring training game. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's right there. It's right around the corner. And we'll see how the West continues to turn out here. But Kenneth, real quick, where can the folks find you?
You'll see me over at Purple Row, and then you can find me on Twitter at KDub1988.
You can find me over on Purple Row as well, writing Wednesday Rock Piles. And then find me on Twitter at sideline_crowd. Then over on Blue Sky, stimmons13.bsky.social. And then writing some stuff over at fansfirstsportsnetwork.com. And hey, follow along over at Rocky Mountain Rooftop as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
We dive a lot more into that Chris Bryant stuff in a new episode. So fun stuff. But this has been Best of the West here with Blake Street Banner. Appreciate you all tuning in, and as well as our producers behind the scenes helping us out. But until next time, this has been Skylar and Kenneth. The best is yet to come.